I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
The second a president finishes their oath to office, they uphold the power of the United States, unlike any other position in the country. They gain new rights as well as new responsibilities. It's one of the most important roles, and a role that can easily change the country or even the world. But with all that power comes an obligation. No one is above the law, not even the president. Or are they?
Because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
The President is the head of state and head of government of the United States of America, as well as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Under Article 2 of the Constitution, the President is responsible for the execution and enforcement of laws by Congress, and to that end, appoints the heads of the federal agencies. A president can do things such as make treaties with the approval of the Senate, veto bills and sign bills, represent our nation in talks with foreign countries, enforce laws that Congress passes, act as a commander-in-chief during war, call out troops to protect our nation against an attack, and more. Some things the president cannot do include making laws, declaring war, deciding how federal money will be spent, interpreting laws, and choosing their cabinet members or Supreme Court justices without Senate approval.
The rule of law, mentioned in the Constitution, states that the government and citizens all abide by the same laws, regardless of political power. The laws must be stable and applied justly.
The president can discuss issues truthfully and express their opinions without worrying that their deliberations will be made public. However, if Congress is using its investigative powers, investigating or prosecuting crimes, or the information is needed to use as evidence in a civil or criminal proceeding, the president's need for confidentiality will be weighed against the interests of those seeking the information. In other words, executive privilege doesn't provide the right to withhold evidence of a crime the president was involved in.
A democracy that functions well has a trustworthy government. The citizens see this and comply with its policies and practices. The government has a responsibility to govern its citizens well, and the citizens have a responsibility to follow reasonable laws and participate in government. So, what happens when the government becomes untrustworthy or abuses the laws they are also subjected to?
On June 17, 1972, 5 men were arrested in the Watergate complex after a failed attempt to plant bugs in the Democratic Party's headquarters. They had been working for Nixon in hopes of getting him reelected. This was one of many of Richard Nixon's schemes, which include harassing citizens on a White House enemies list, burglarizing the office of the psychiatrist who treated the revealer of the Pentagon Papers, and using the FBI and CIA to cover up his involvement in any of it.
After the incriminating tapes were acquired, they revealed that Nixon had used the CIA to hold back on an inquiry from the FBI. Congress then began the impeachment process based on obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and contempt of Congress. According to USA.gov, impeachment is the process of bringing charges against a government official for wrongdoing. A trial may be held, and the official may be removed from office. The Constitution gives Congress the power to impeach federal officials. An official can be impeached for treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors.
The process of impeachment starts out with the House of Representatives bringing articles or charges of impeachment against an official. Then, if the House adopts the articles by a simple majority vote, the official has been impeached. After that, the Senate holds an impeachment trial. In the case of a president, the U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice presides. Next, if found guilty, the official is removed from office. They may never be able to hold elected office again. And if they are not found guilty, they may continue to serve in office.
In this case, Nixon resigned before he could be impeached, allowing him to avoid the governmental consequence for his wrongdoings. This is an example of Congress deciding that the reasons for searching for the information are more important than the president's request to keep the information private. This shows that no one should be above the law, and you cannot get away with crimes because of your position of power.
Although this is true, and it shows that a president cannot be above the law when checks and balances are in place, it also shows that it's much easier for a president to escape higher consequences for their actions. Nixon avoided conviction by resigning and being pardoned by his vice president, which demonstrates the advantage of his immense power. Let's take a look at another example of presidential powers.
During the January 6th insurrection, the United States Capitol was stormed by a mob of supporters of Republican President Donald J. Trump on January 6, 2021. The attack disrupted a joint session of Congress to certify the results of the presidential election of 2020, which Trump had lost to his Democratic opponent Joe Biden. The attack was widely regarded as an insurrection or an attempted coup d'etat.
Former President Donald Trump faced his second impeachment trial in the Senate on February 9th when lawmakers began the process of considering whether to convict him on a charge of incitement of insurrection following the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Trump was the first president ever to be impeached twice. It was a largely party-line vote, but 10 Republicans also joined Democrats in condemning the president for stoking violence.
Inciting lawlessness or violence is against the law, and being president, former president, or presidential candidate doesn't exempt you from that. Citizens have the right to be safe, giving the government the responsibility to protect them, and citizens have a responsibility to obey laws that protect them and others too. According to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. The rights and responsibilities above are included in this. But this creates a question. Are the punishments for the average person the same as punishments a president faces for these crimes? The answer is no.
The United States Code says, whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years, or both, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. President Trump was impeached for inciting an insurrection, but he was not convicted under federal law, and he was not voted out of office. This shows that the rule of law rests in the hands of the people with power, and if you have enough power, you can face lesser punishment.
So, is the prior statement true? Is nobody above the law? Well, nobody should be above the law. The rule of law ensures this, but this doesn't mean some people can't be above the law. It is all a matter of perception. Are people who are pardoned above the law? Are presidents who resign to avoid punishment above the law? Are people who avoid conviction of crimes that could strip them of their position because they are president above the law?
Ever since 1789, there's been one leader of the country who is responsible for the well-being of the people of the United States. But with all the responsibility comes an occasional irresponsibility, and how that irresponsibility is dealt with lies and checks and balances of our federal government. Only the future holds the truth of what will happen in the next coming years of our nation.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.